At 8:19 in the morning, he was pronounced dead. On July 16th, 2020, Wesley Perky was killed by lethal injection. He had kidnapped, raped, killed, dismembered, and discarded his 16-year-old victim in a septic pond. Her name was Jennifer Long. This was the first death sentence to be carried out in over 17 years. Today, I will be explaining why some extremely inhumane and horrific criminals should be prosecuted using the death penalty. With much research, I feel I am qualified to explain why the death penalty should not be omitted. When it comes to politics, we must all decide where we stand so we can make the most out of the democratic republic government our founding fathers worked so hard to build. The death penalty gets justice on someone who violated someone else's right to life. It's not as cruel as the common misconception. It saves money spent reforming criminals who will never return to society, and finally, actually helps some families to gain closure. Today, I will be debunking 5 myths. Number 1, everyone has the right to life. 2, the death penalty is malicious and unjust. 3, the death penalty is nothing more than harsh government-mandated murder. 4, closure with the death penalty is impossible. And finally, it's cheaper to send people to prison for life rather than prosecute using the death penalty. The first myth I will be talking about is the death penalty in relation to the right of life. Everyone has the right to life. It's stated in the Constitution. Therefore, this right can't be taken away. Yeah, you're right. Everyone does have the right to life. However, when we violate this right for someone else, there should be serious consequences. Author Audrey Chen wrote, "These criminals gave up the right to life when they violated that right for someone else." Like Wesley Perky, the criminals in these cases often take away their victim's right to life. Jennifer Long was a young girl who had bright possibilities for her future. Perky took away her possibilities of a future family, career, and a happy adult life. So since he violated these rights for her, why should his rights be protected? A criminal who is uprooting our fundamental right to human life will continue to do so unless we stop them. In the same way that someone who uses hate speech can have their freedom of speech taken away, a murderer's right to life should not be protected either. The next argument against the death penalty is that we can put criminals on life sentences and use reformation programs. The death penalty is cruel, and our justice system should aim to be reformative, not punitive. When someone is given the death penalty, the only other option would be a life sentence. But life sentences come with very, very, very high-costing reformation programs. Why should we be spending money reforming criminals who will never return to society? Author Kathleen Benzer wrote, "The United States spent more than $80 billion on corrections, with the majority put on the states. Why should this much of our hard-earned tax money be spent reforming people who will never return to society and who killed our innocent civilians?" The third myth I will be debunking is that the death penalty is harsh and cruel. People's right to life is impossible to take away. The death penalty is nothing more than harsh government-mandated murder. Actually, the lethal injection process is a quick and fair way to deal with the worst of criminals. According to author Deborah Deneau, the typical lethal injection consists of 3 chemicals in the following order. First, they're given sodium thiopental, which is something used to put the criminal in a deep unconscious state in about 20 seconds. Then they're given pycnibromide, which is a total muscle relaxant which, when given in sufficient dosages, paralyzes all voluntary muscles, thereby causing suffocation. The last injection given is potassium chloride. This induces irreversible cardiac arrest. If all goes as planned, the entire execution process takes around 5 minutes, with death occurring just 2 minutes after the final injection. Another reason to keep the death penalty is closure for the family of the victim. Healing is a slow process, not a standalone event. Therefore, the death penalty can't help people heal. According to the Death Penalty Information Center, in a study done by the University of Minnesota, 2.5% of co-victims said they found closure with the death penalty. While this number is not extremely high, it's amazing that any number of people are able to reach closure after such a horrific event. We have an obligation to help as many people as we can get over such a traumatic event. The last myth I will be discussing is that life in prison is cheaper. It is actually cheaper to send people to prison for life rather than the death sentences. Author Audrey Chen wrote, "The only reason that the death penalty is more expensive is because the legal process takes so long. Otherwise, it would obviously cost less than life in prison, simply because convicts don't require room and board. If capital punishment is currently too costly, we should reform the process, not eliminate it." This is true. If we were to shorten the prosecution process, it would be cheaper. The cost of housing and food is expensive. The only reason that a life sentence is cheaper is because of all the legal fines associated with the death penalty. According to Statistica, the average time in between sentencing and execution in 2020 was 238 months. This is due to the 17-year-long halt in all death sentences. If we were to speed up the prosecution process, we would help serve justice to all inhumane criminals and help spread the message that the worst of crimes will not go unnoticed and we will not tolerate it. Today, I debunked 5 myths. I discussed first how a criminal lost a right to life by violating that right for someone else. Then I discussed how the new process of lethal injection is less cruel than the common misconception. Then I talked about how it's more than just harsh government-mandated murder. I talked about how it actually helps some families reach closure. And finally, how if we were to speed up the prosecution process, it would be cheaper. If we learn about current topics in politics and where we stand with those, we will help shape this country into what we want it to be. I encourage my fellow audience members to decide whether they feel comfortable allowing murderers and rapists to live long, healthy, and happy lives after they violated that right for someone else.